Alright y'all, welcome back to the channel and to some more home defense testing. And today we've got a rather interesting combo with a shell that has, quite frankly, never lived up to what it probably should have. We've tested a few different shells from this brand and all of them have been less than impressive, to say the least. A lot of times they're a little bit anemically weak as well, but we'll see how these do in a home defense application today, since their intended purpose that we've already tested in the hunting scene has yet to show us any kind of actually nice solid results that I would want to use out there in the field. So maybe they should be more of a home defense close range application type of shell, or maybe you should just skip them or use them as cheap range ammo. But we'll see what they can do in a defensive application, and maybe that might be kind of their specialty zone. Before the shells I've got today, I brought out some more of these Sellier and Bellot buckshot loads. These ones are kind of their more hunting oriented type of shell. It says right on the box, a new breed of hunting ammunition, and a buckshot shell that's got a waterfowl scene in the background. Not exactly something that fits together, but pattern wise, they typically pattern like a waterfowl shell, just all over the place. But we've never tested them up close and personal yet, so maybe that changes today. But these are a 12 gauge 2 3/4 inch 12 pellet load of double-aught. There's no box claim velocity on this box, but these have traditionally been a little bit on the weak side for velocity, and I imagine more of that trend continues with our shorter barrel that we've got today as well. So 12 pellets in a 2 3/4 inch shell. They're supposed to be double-aught. Are they actually double-aught sized? Maybe, maybe not, but we'll see what they can do as far as those up close personal patterns are concerned. But here's what one of those shells looks like outside of the packaging. You can see pretty typical cheaper import style loading with the plastic overshot card. This one's white, but no buffer, no wad, no full length shot cup in there, no plating or anything like that, just a little fiber gas seal piece that sits under them. There is 12 pellets in here. They look very close to double-aught. If they are smaller, it's just barely. Maybe they're a single-aught buck pellet or something about like that, but nothing fancy with the load. And even quality control, this is a big clump of hot glue on the side of the shell. So if you didn't catch that, that might jam you up in an actual crunch time scenario. So quality control wise, not anything great either, clearly, but maybe they'll work in a close home defense scenario range as far as the pattern capability goes. As for the shotgun we're running, I brought out my Remington 870 special purpose. I've got the 18.5 inch cylinder bore barrel back on here, so completely smooth bore inside, no choke constriction out of the end. This is your very typical common 870 defensive oriented type of setup, so nothing fancy or special for the gun combo either. So as for our test today, we're going to run it through the same paces that we usually do with a defensive style pattern test. I've got 5 torsos lined up down there, so we're going to take 5 shots ranging from 7 to 25 yards, so 7, 10, 15, 20, and 25. That covers everything from in the same room to down the hallway to even out on the porch, driveway, or out to a barn or shed as well. Obviously, at those longer ranges, you may or may not actually want to take that shot, but each situation is going to be different, so that's up to you to determine if you're ever put in those situations. But we at least need to know if we have a range limitation as far as pattern capability with these, and we might actually legitimately run into that today. But we'll get you guys a view of those targets. We'll take all 5 of our shots and we'll see how they actually perform, and if they are the same kind of weak, anemic, not very impressive performers that S&B buckshot has typically been in our testing. All right, so we'll run through our velocities real quick before we look at our intruder targets. That box does not have a velocity claim on it, and it's probably a good thing it doesn't, because these shells are still anemic, to say the least. Yes, we only have an 18.5 inch barrel, but usually that is enough to get us at least over 1100 feet per second for velocity with pretty much any buckshot load we run through it, and we're not even close to that here. We had 1032 233, which is obviously not correct, so I'll go ahead and delete that shot out of our average. 923, 1514, which is another incorrect reading. We'll talk about why here in a second, so I'll delete that one out of our average as well. And 890. For an average at 948 with our actual good readings. That's about the same as what we've typically seen from these shells, is 900 to 1,000 feet per second. You can probably hear it in the video. These shells don't sound like a typical 12 gauge double-aught buck, and when you fire them, they smell like old military ball ammo, so whatever powder they're using is obviously something pretty finicky, maybe something they shouldn't be, and it really is surprising because we're getting these anemic velocities, but they have the recoil of a standard cheap 12 gauge double-aught buck range type of load. They're not a low recoil shell. They definitely don't feel as anemic as the velocities that we're getting, but it just doesn't add up. They almost have a smoke cloud like a muzzleloader as well, although it is definitely not black powder. But I will go ahead and show another up close look at that powder. I don't know what they are using. I'm not a hand loader or reloader, but if somebody immediately can recognize that and know if that is actually what they should be using in them or not, then please let us know in the comments, because something does not add up with the recoil and the sound and the smoke cloud and the anemic velocities with this type of powder, whatever it is. So velocities still good enough to where I wouldn't want to be standing in front of it, but let's look at our targets and see how our intruders fared as for our pattern performance. Alright, so we'll start here with our intruders that are inside the house, kind of in the same room or down a hallway or something like that. We have 7 yards on the right and 10 yards on the left. We'll start with our 7-yard spread. We're sitting at right at 5 1/4 inches of total spread. Pretty nice even clump of pellets. It does only have 11 pellet holes, but I would imagine the 12th pellet is kind of right where that little fiber piece went in as well. So I believe that is all 12 pellets that we see right there. That's about the size of a handprint, or maybe a little bit smaller. So 7 yards, pretty well point blanking in. That's gonna work just fine. Moving over to 10 yards, and we open our spread up very quickly. We now have all 12 pellets there individually, and they're at 13.5 inches of spread. So just a 3-yard difference. We go from 5 1/4 to 13.5 inches. Still good enough, you know, inside the same room as somebody, down a hallway, whatever. I wouldn't want to stand in front of it, but we saw the velocities that we're getting, which is enough to be a bad day for an intruder for sure. But really, when compared to what pretty much any other cheap import load can do for spread and velocity, if we're getting 1200 out of pretty much any other load that we want to run through that same gun, and we're typically seeing 6 to 8 inches of spread at 10 yards from those combinations, this is still not great, even if it would do the job. It's not going to be very nice to get hit with 12 pellets of double-aught at about 1,000 feet per second. It could certainly do the job for sure, but we quickly get less than ideal for pattern. So now moving over to our 15-yard spread. Again, like I mentioned earlier, anywhere 15 yards and beyond may be outside the house, in the yard, in the driveway, something of that nature. It's up to you to determine whether you should or should not take that shot. But we need to know our range limitation with these shells if we have one. But out here at 15 yards, we continued opening up our spread. We're now at 15 inches overall. And granted, we do still keep a decently even spread of pellets. That one at the very top up there might be a little bit of a flyer, but all the rest of them are generally right within the chest cavity where you want them to be at. But I'm sure out here at 15, 20, 25 yards, at the already anemic 950 velocity average, we're probably starting to lose velocity already. So even if we have the pattern performance, we may not have the energy or penetration capability to reliably do the job, especially if somebody's wearing thick jackets and stuff like that. But pattern-wise, it's still plenty good enough to do the job. So now we'll move over to our 20-yard spread, and we still keep a very similar pattern here. Looks about the same, still a decently even spread. We're now at 16 3/4 inches overall, so a little bit bigger than the 15-inch spread at 15 yards. And this is actually our most broad spread of the day by a little bit, and it's turning into a rather interesting trend. 7 yards, we had a condensed area of shot, then immediately opened it up at 10 yards with over double the pattern size. And then from 15 yards to 20 yards, very small amount of difference. And even now moving over to 25 yards, we're now back to 16 1/4 inches, where we were just at 16 3/4 inches at 20 yards. very interesting turn of events here. Was that completely luck of the draw? Maybe, maybe not, but we pretty much had a tight spread, and then it immediately opened up and kept the same size spread all the way out to even 25 yards. And for pattern capability, this is still plenty good enough for a man-sized torso out at 25 yards. Again, we have velocities and energies to keep in mind with these shells, but pattern performance, they're good enough in a defensive scenario to do the job. So I'll walk down the line one more time here, now at 20 yards at 16 3/4 inches. Then we'll move over here to 15 yards, which is 15 inches. All three of those were very similar looking patterns as well. And finally, we'll move over here to our 7 and 10 yard inside the house type of intruders. And I think this is probably about what I expected to see out of these shells, except maybe I thought we would see a little more spread or a little more wild or inconsistent results once we got to 20-25 yards, but that wasn't really the case. So what's the determination on these shells today? In the right scenarios, they would certainly work, even at 900 to 1,000 feet per second. But they're not a shell I would want to use. They may or may not reliably cycle in a semi-auto platform. The spreads open up very quickly once you get any sort of distance past about point blank, although they do keep relatively consistently even patterns, within 25 yards, that is. But you just don't have the velocity or energy numbers behind them. Even a low recoil, managed recoil, dedicated defensive-oriented shell that's at a lower velocity still keeps usually about 1,100 feet per second. So probably not a load I would run in my defensive gun, that's for sure. But I wouldn't want to run my chances standing in front of it either. So if it's what you have, might be better than a sharp stick for sure, but nothing great or amazing for results overall, especially when it comes to how anemic the velocity actually is. So what do we think about these results here overall? If we just looked at pattern performance, you would think, yeah, it's any other average, maybe cheaper load, something like that. Pattern performance is perfectly adequate. It's interesting to see how quickly we open up versus how much we actually stay very similar as we go down the line. Didn't expect to see that, and usually that's not something you see. Maybe it's luck of the draw, maybe it's not. I don't know. But as far as the actual velocities and energy dynamics and stuff of these shells, it's just not there. That's what I figured we would see coming into it. All the different S&B loads we've tried with their buckshot lineups have done the same thing. Just anemically weak velocities. And even down to the Sellier Bellot pistol and rifle ammo that I have personally tried over the years before I started actually filming stuff for you guys, that stuff has been less than impressive as well. I've had a number of jam ups with their 9mm stuff. I've had less than stellar accuracy with a couple different rifle stuff. I think I tried some 30-06 several years ago and it was not impressive. So I don't know what they're really doing. That's kind of what we've seen sometimes from these European, Eastern European type of countries that are producing shells and importing them over to the US. What may be good and typical and the normal for them over there is not matching up to what we have over here. And even their shot sizes are a little different than ours as well. So maybe that's coming into play, but whatever they're using, even in longer barrels for powder, is still getting 900 feet per second or so from these shells. So I don't know what the idea or the plan was with these. The box technically shows they're supposed to be a hunting load, but I definitely wouldn't want to deer hunt with these. Not at that velocity for sure. But I guess leave all your thoughts down below. What do you think about those shells and how they performed? Is this something you would actually ever run if it were to come down to a home defense scenario? Or would you push these into the deer hunting realm? Or are these just cheap target loads to you? Or are there something you're just gonna kind of skip over on the shelf, which would probably be my suggestion personally anyway? Or maybe you're just fine with this load. Again, I wouldn't want to stand in front of it, but I don't know if it's going to meet a lot of people's standards either. And if you're more knowledgeable on powders and stuff like that, what do you think's going on here with the powder that they're using versus the velocity and recoil numbers that we're getting, as well as maybe what other stuff do you want to see us run with these shells? Through other chokes or something? Maybe we get some good patterns, but maybe not have the velocity capability or anything like that. Let me know what you guys might want to see out of them. But with that being said, I've got some more testing to get done for you guys, so I'm going to get back to it. As always, we have the channel Instagram as well as the mailbox where you can send stuff if you'd like. All that information will be in the description if you're interested in it, but I'm going to get back to it, so I'll see y'all in the next one.